Vickie, and to show how being together and working together and supporting each other in times where we need it the most is very important. The reason why I have decided to speak about resilience, it is because I think all of us, regardless of our profession, whether you are an executive assistant, a manager, women, men, all of us have to deal with tremendous stress and certain setbacks in life. And we forget sometimes how being resilient is something that we can also train ourselves to become more resilient, and how we deal and how we can survive keeping our job at the same time. Having gone myself through quite a big ordeal several years ago, about 12 years ago, I have learned from my mistakes in not asking for help sooner, or not realizing how I managed to survive and get through it because I was working and focusing on my resilience. So I would like to share a little bit of my experience at work, being resilient, having gone through myself through a medical crisis with small children and a relationship that was already on a rocky road at the time. What does resilience mean? It comes from the Latin word risalire, which means springing back. And that is something that we can definitely something from. So I would like you to, after this presentation, think a little bit about your own personal story, and go and look at certain moments in your life where your resilience went down, or where you might have had a difference in doing it. The most important thing we need to do when we are going through a rough time, whether it's professionally, whether it's privately, or a medical situation, is we need to connect with people. It's something you don't do on the moment where you need it most. It's an ongoing thing, and it's the biggest learning that I had, that I did not connect enough before something bad really happened in my life. Is to take opportunity to learn from our mistakes. You know, what we need to do is find a problem if you're losing your resilience at work, trying to be perfect. And I think it's something that definitely assistants deal with in general, much more than any profession, is our, perfectionism. But sometimes it's okay to be human, most of the time. And as I teach my children, by making mistakes is when we learn and we grow after every single mistake we make. One of the things I think, of working on your resilience is that we need to avoid, or try to avoid, to seeing a crisis moment as something that's insurmountable to get over. It's very difficult, especially when you have to and combine your job and combine the situation you are in, and whether or not you have children, there's always family or friends around. And I believe that is something that was the hardest for me. I was really stuck in a crisis, and it's been an ongoing crisis for years. And I think because I thought that the problem was insurmountable. So by breaking the problem down into little steps, as many of us know in project management, how do you eat an elephant? One little bite at a time. And I think it's one of the things that by writing things down, by making sure that you see your problem as something that you can get over, by using the connections, by using the people around you. Now, I understand that it's difficult when you are in a full-time job and something happens outside, that it is extremely difficult to keep your focus. And therefore, later on in the webinar that I'm giving to you today, I hope to give you some tips and tricks of my experience and what I have learned from it. The biggest thing I learned was not to dramatize, especially at work. I never made a drama out of the situation that I was in, and I always kept a smiley face and was able to continue. However, it does become difficult. And if you do not do the drama at work, you might do it with friends or family or with loved ones. It is human to sometimes not be able to deal with a crisis or lose our resilience in order for us to focus and always stay professional. Because some things I have noticed being an executive assistant for many years is that I try to continue to play that perfect role and always the being available and cool and calm role within my private life, which makes it sometimes difficult, and which makes me realize that it's not human to be able to continue being in that role all the time. When I say no drama is definitely something that I've learned, to be open and honest and forward at work and remain professional at all times. I had a little step forward, whether it was one day without pain or whether it was a day where I was able to do a great day at work without thinking of my crisis situation at home. Now, I spent a long time in hospital, so I'm hoping that none of you have to go through that. But I know some of us do, and it's really extremely difficult. And even then, when I spent that time at hospital, I continued during my sick leave to work as an assistant. I made an agreement with my manager at the time at Microsoft to allow me to be still part of the job every day a little bit. And it helped me to keep my resilience, to keep fighting through this difficult time. Now, every time I had a step forward, whether I accomplished to spend 1 hour online, to put some contacts in my manager's contact list, or to send out 2 invites, I celebrated that accomplishment. It was for me every time a single step forward, and it made my resilience grow. Professionally, when I went through another crisis a couple of years ago, going through a divorce, a separation, every time I accomplished to not take this tremendous stress and pain and problems to work, I celebrated that success with my colleagues. Or I would tell myself at the end of the day, Laura, come on, you can do this. You can be resilient. You can build on your strengths. So no matter how big or small your celebration is, or your accomplishment, I would say, take some time to reflect upon it. I think it's extremely important that we do that more. And especially as women, I have the tendency to see when I coach and I give trainings that not enough of us celebrate these accomplishments, whether it's a private accomplishment dealing with a crisis situation, or whether it's an accomplishment at work. And I guarantee you, by doing that, I really felt stronger, which automatically built my resilience thereafter. Steps, and I think that was the hardest for me. I'm a very energetic person, and I think I've over the past 5-6 years have been coaching quite a lot of assistants and other women and men in other roles. And I think the hardest thing to do is we try to run. I think we're always trying to run because it's something that is part of our society. There's very little time for us to stop and sit down and reflect upon our jobs, upon the situation we might be in, good or bad. Even if you are not dealing, and I hope many of you are not dealing with any crisis situation or health matter or a situation at work, we still do not take enough time to stop and to say, you know what, do I have to run from A to Z for me to get there? Because if we continue to running all the time, there's quite a big risk for us to either fall down, break something, and some of you that know me might definitely know it happened to me. And I think the biggest learning and the biggest success I got was when I stopped. And I decided to look at my journey in the long end and say, how will I get there? Do I need to run there? Do I need to jump over many hurdles? Can I go in a straight line? Do I have to go in a curved line? And I made a little project plan for myself, step by step, to think, okay, how will I get through this? How will I get through the journey at work, dealing with all of the other things privately? Because basically each of these are single projects. I had to figure out my project at work. How will I deal with that, dealing with all of these other personal projects, health, separation, looking after children, dealing with economical crisis or changes, and just generally speaking, people around us that come to you with their problems. And as you know, I put the slide on, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And I believe it's been the biggest learning I've had as far as building my resilience. Whenever I was running or trying to go somewhere too fast, something would go wrong or I would collapse, and I would take 3 steps back for every one that I took forward. By taking single steps, you will have a much better outcome. And believe it, we might think or feel that we need to run so other people see that we are good and strong and runners, but they will be able, especially at work, your managers, the people you work with, if you take single clear steps and outline steps, they will be not only better or easier for them to follow you, but you will be aligned more. You will be able to build a better rapport, a better communication, and automatically, therefore, a better outcome. That we need to take or pay more attention of is that we need to take decisive actions. It's one of the biggest mistakes that I have made. I had many ideas, and because I was running all the time to try and keep performing at work whilst I was being ill in hospital, whilst I was being a mother and a wife, it didn't allow me to take any decisive actions. Where were my priorities? What action did I need to take first in order to be able to get through all of these things happening at the same time? And the biggest learning I did was to take actions by actually taking the time to stop, rethinking where I wanted to go to, what needed to be done at work. Were they able to survive without me? And of course, you know, when my drama happened, or my trauma, not drama, excuse my, the change of words, my trauma, my medical trauma happened, the first action I took was to let go. I had to let go to the fact that I was unable to change anything about the situation, and I needed to deal with it. So that was the good action I took. However, everything else after that, I lost the ability to take decisive action. So by taking little steps and by looking at your goals, when you are trying to be resilient, dealing with all of these things in your life, and we have this tremendous fear constantly to lose our jobs. And I have noticed over the years, coaching so many fellow assistants, that it's definitely a huge thing we deal with, is this constant fear, will I lose my job? If I'm not that resilient, what will happen to my job? If I fall out sick, what will happen to my job? And I think the biggest learning I've had is that you will be just fine. But by taking decisive actions and making an action plan, how you will actually deal with the situation. This means also, when you take decisive action, that you will find or need to find a way to delegate tasks, both at work, private, emotionally. It's a hard thing to do, but I'm hoping after talking to you today and after sharing many more of the Webathons today, that it will give you and build your resilience at work and to reduce the stress level. So taking decisive actions is basically separating step by step each of the goals and each of the situations you are actually dealing with. By asking yourself a question, you will open up your personal discovery. And building my resilience, I really started to write down many questions. What if I lose my job because I was off almost for a year being sick? What is the worst that can happen? So what if I lose my job? What is the next step for me to do? What are my children going to do without their mother all these months being away? All of these questions were popping into my head. And I think, you know, the personal discovery comes from taking decisive actions, putting it all together, connecting with people, talking to people, finding people around you that are in a similar situation. It is only after, when I came back to work and people had heard about my story, that so many of them came to me and actually spoke about their own personal stories, how they went through medical issues, divorce, separation, losing a partner, death of a beloved one. All of us have to deal with these things in life. but all of us have a face or a mask at work and try to continue to be resilient. Now, asking yourself the question, or maybe ask the question to other people, you will discover that you are not alone. You're never alone in this situation. So for myself, it really helped me to ask questions to myself, to people around me personally, private people, friends, family, neighbors, and then at work. And at work, it's probably the biggest discovery that I did. How many of us, colleagues or from other companies that you meet, struggle at a time in their life with the same things? And I think it's human that we try to always be strong and show that we are resilient and that we are superhuman. But at the end of the day, I think once you go through something yourself and you start to talk to other people, you really feel that you're not alone, that there's so many of us going through different situations. This was probably one of my survival skills. I'm a natural positive person. There's a good and a bad thing to that, believe it or not. The fact that I am very positive and energetic also meant that I was always running. I was high-speed train, which meant I had many collisions and often things did not work out the way I should have at work because I was trying to go too fast. But one of the things I would like to share, which is definitely something I'm a true believer in, is that every time a negative thought pops into your mind, try to neutralize it with a positive action. And it's something that I discovered that whenever I was going through a negative thought, the fear about losing my job or not being able to handle it because what I was going through, I would call someone or get up, go for a little walk. When I was spending months and months in hospital, I would make sure to try and walk around. And when I was negative about my situation, I would see other patients in a worse situation. I would try to put a positive thought in my mind. When I was thinking negative about, afraid of losing my job, I would call my boss or a colleague just to have a little catch-up chat. And it would immediately give me positive energy. So when you have a negative thought, whether it's about your job in general, whether it's about you're dealing with a personal thing, if you're having to do a project, if you're busy at work, if the kids are not listening, any of that thing, I think the only way to build resilience and to try to get through it is to neutralize it with a positive action. Now, it is difficult. It sounds easier said than done, but I have tried it many times and done it many times, and it's always proven success, to a point where my children, when they feel me negative or down, and they try to put me in a positive action or neutralize it with a positive action, we all benefit from it. And the same at work. I've gone through many moments with my managers, top-level managers, when their thoughts were quite negative. And I, as their executive assistant, took it upon myself to neutralize it immediately with a positive. Developing confidence in your ability to solve problems and trusting your instincts helps to build resilience. I'm a winner, and it's a word that I've said to myself many a times at work, when I was trying to be a good mum, educating, going through separation, going through medical health problems. I think one of the things that has helped me and that I have seen when I coach assistants is trusting your instincts. When you have a gut feeling, write it down, try it. And one of the things that has really helped me grow in my resilience and my ways of working and dealing with situations, both work and personally, is to write down the question, what is the worst that can happen? And it's really helped me to develop my confidence, to help me trust my instincts. Now, it is something that's very scary at times, but when you feel that you're, trusting your instinct will help to resolve a problem, go back to some of my slides in the beginning of this presentation and celebrate the success when you've went through, when you have followed your instincts, when you feel that you have developed your confidence, and call yourself a winner, regardless of how big or small the accomplishment or what you have done or what you've succeeded in might be. Try to see a broader picture, and I love this picture because my daughter is currently studying photography, and she uses this, what you see on the slide. She needs to do that at school, and I started doing this when I travel, when I'm somewhere. Do this motion, try it once, wherever you are, be it in your living room, at work, and try to see a bigger picture. And you will be surprised by doing this little action with your hands, how different things can look. So if you have a negative thought and you feel your resilience is going down, you feel that you are losing it, that you cannot manage a full-time job, family, friends, whatever you might be going through, doing this will give you a moment to stop and breathe. And you will be able to look at whatever you want, turn it around 360 degrees. And if you spot something that makes you breathe calmer, whether it's in the office, try it once, that makes you see further than you would probably look at the entire picture. This will help you look out of the box. And it's helped me to think again of this same question. Laura, you're going through a rough time. You're afraid you might lose your job. You're afraid you might not be performing at 100%. I felt my resilience going down. I had days, months, weeks sometimes where I had to drag myself out of bed. But still I was always able to perform at work, to perform as a trainer. But little by little I had to let the steam go slower and take little steps and step back. And doing this action with my hands have made me discover a whole new way of looking at what I used to call problems. And I stopped using the word problems, and I've actually actioned that towards my managers in the past couple of months. Whenever we're dealing with some critical situations, that's the word we try to use for it, we always, instead of calling each other and say, Laura, we've got a problem, my manager now calls me and say, Laura, let's try to resolve this situation. And believe it or not, it has built the resilience of myself and my three managers in our team tremendously, because we look at things differently and we find solutions rather than thinking of just problems. So I hope you will start doing this. And it's funny to do this action with your hands, especially when you're walking on the street, because I guarantee you when you do this with friends or family or your children, you will have fun, because inevitably when you do this and you turn around looking at things, you will come across some very funny moments. I've done this exercise with my managers, and it has really changed the way we work together and communicate by rethinking how we look at things. A simple action with our hands, a simple question we can ask ourselves can really help you to rethink your confidence, to rethink how you work and how you would like to move forward. And it will help you build your resilience, because it forces you to take a moment to stop and breathe. We said it before, maintaining a positive outlook. Now, it is hard. And I always tell people when I coach them, when they go through difficult moments, allow yourself to mourn. Whether it's dealing with a difficult situation at work, whether it's dealing with a health issue, with relationship problems, with children growing up, little ones, teenagers, goodness, the parents out there, we know what it's like. Try to remain a positive outlook. It's been difficult for me always, but I do manage to keep a positive outlook. And the experience I've had, especially at work, I think as assistants, and I really am talking now about our profession, we have the ability to have a magnetism around us. When we are positive, when we are showing a smile and positive energy, the office around us, our managers will thrive on that positivity that we have. Now, does that mean we are always happy? No, we are not. But it helps you at work to create a tremendous energy. And when you are positive and you have a positive energy, you ooze that out at work and things do become easier. And I am someone that really tests that out with my managers. When I feel they are too stressed out, starting to talk in a negative, I call them toxic words. there is a problem, it's going to be difficult, we will not be able to do this, I try to use my positive outlook and say, okay, let's look for solutions. We will be able to do this. Who can we ask for help? How can we delegate this? Shall we reach out to another team? All of that is called maintaining a positive outlook. Now, sometimes I'm not capable of maintaining a positive outlook. And then I thrive on people around me, both professionally and privately, and yes, definitely also my children, to make me look at things differently, to change the toxic words I might have inside of me. It has helped me grow in my professional ability to lead great leaders of today, to keep positive, to always try to think ahead of time and to try to eliminate these negative thoughts and these toxic words, what I call. Actually visualize what you want, because we all worry about what we fear. What if I'm off sick and I lose my job? What if I'm off sick and my partner runs away? What if I don't do a good job, or I might not be as resilient or not as performant? What would happen? What if I make the wrong decision with my children? What if I make the wrong decision finding a new job or about my career, investing in a property? It doesn't matter. Again, I go back to the slide prior. It's the positive attitude. It's trying to eliminate these toxic words. And I will share with you a very personal story. Some of you know my story, and I have gone through really a lot of rough years. But I decide to call them interesting years, inspiring years of getting to know myself, of building my resilience, of meeting new, incredible people, role models, and of letting go of people, both professionally and privately, that were taking my energy away, that were not giving positive energy back. So what I've tried doing was to visualize, what is it that you want, Laura? What is it that you want for your managers at work, for your career, for your growth? What is it that you want from getting through this divorce or getting through separation? What is it that you want from your family, from your friends, from your children? But most of all, I had to let go of the fear. Because by worrying, what if, I was stopping myself and I was performing less at work. And when you perform less at work, that is when your managers will worry. And their worry becomes annoyance. And their annoyance becomes frustrations. We will talk later on about building this trust and being open in the way we communicate. Now, what I wanted was to get through this interesting time in my life. And you will laugh because I am really trying not to use the word problem. So I'm teaching myself every day, what can I use as a positive word? And I really urge you to try it. So I needed to visualize what I wanted to do. I started to talk to people, to really throw my problem into the crowd of people that I trusted, both professionally and privately. And it has allowed me to grow professionally in the past months by just visualizing what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. Now, I also had a talk openly with my managers. I explained them my situation. I called it being assertive. I told them what I was going through, what I needed, what I wanted, where my weaknesses were, but where my strengths would thrive in my role as their executive assistant. And funny enough, when I showed them this slide, we all sat down because all of my bosses went through very difficult personal situation at the same time, as I did in the past months. So we did this exercise together. Am I telling you to do this exercise with your managers now after this webinar? No, but it is something to think about, because after all, we're all humans. And what is the worst that could happen if you do this with your managers and say, what is it that we want as individuals within this team and as a team, as a group? If any of you in your team are dealing with difficult situation, this is a perfect way to come to grips and try to be there for each other and grow together. Don't fear asking the question. Don't fear sitting down with people around you. You can do this with family, with friends. What is it that you want? You ask a friend. What is it that we want as friends together as a group? And I guarantee you it's something that I'm doing now currently, and it's helping me in both ways. I have now managed to really grow as a person, dealing with all of these things in my life and professionally, and getting successes and celebrating them every single day. And definitely the relationship with my current 3 managers has grown tremendously. The trust has grown, and the most wonderful thing I think that came out of this was the ease that we work together, the tranquility we have, the non-fearless working. We work, we communicate fearlessly with each other, and it's the best feeling ever. We should take care of ourselves, yet it's probably so hard for us to do that. And I think women believe that it's harder for women than for men. However, I believe men are different in that way. So I'm not trying to eliminate anyone, but I worked for many men before, and I was raised with my 2 brothers and my dad, losing my mum at a very young age, and having my sister getting married very soon after. So I think this is a human thing, that we neglect taking care of ourselves. If we neglect to do that, we cannot take care of others. And I think it's what happened to me both ways. I was not looking after myself enough, going through all of these turbulent times personally. And I neglected my children. Of course, I was feeding them, I was hugging them and loving them. But emotionally, I was not always there for them. And that is something that by taking care of myself now, both professionally and on a personal level, I have grown on an emotional level, first and foremost with my children, most important in my life. But thereafter, with friends and family, and also on a professional level. I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, and I started to feel that I was not able to take care of the people that came to see me the way I wanted to. So after one training, I felt really bad about myself. And I was openly telling people in the training that I was losing my resilience, that I was human. We all cried in each other's arms because a lot of the women were going through the same thing as I was at the same moment. But it built a tremendous trust between us. And most of these women stayed longer after my workshop, and we talked openly about how can we take care of ourselves more in order for us to take care of others. We spoke about taking care of our managers, taking care of our partners, taking care of our children, nieces, nephews, neighbors, friends. And all of us, funny enough, came to the realization that we didn't take care of ourselves. Not at work, not enough. Everybody else was getting promoted. We didn't ask for a promotion for years, some of us. We didn't take care of ourselves when it came to saying no, to setting limits, to setting boundaries. But when you cannot do that, how will we be able to take care the way we should be taking care of our managers? And it's something I think that I've learned. I'm very protective over my managers because I've become more protective over my own time, my own work-life balance, my own time that I need to be emotionally strong and available for the people that really matter in my life, and foremost those are my 2 children. So by taking care of yourself, you can take care of others. And I had to actually teach my managers that because, my 3 managers, especially our president, was giving a lot of time away and building up his agenda and, taking away the time that I put there for him to take care of himself. Until, of course, a couple of weeks before, 3 years ago, when I started working for him, he called me completely collapsing. And I gave him a bit of a scare that if he would not take care of himself, something really bad would happen to him health-wise. We laughed, but he hung the phone up, and funny enough, he made an appointment with his general practitioner to go for a checkup. And I think I received an email from his wife 2 days ago to thank me that finally someone managed to wake him up, that he had to take care of himself first. And by doing that, our president, my manager, has really changed in the way he does his leadership. He manages now to be there so much more for his direct reports, for his team, emotionally and on a business level. But it's allowed him to spend much more quality time with his spouse and his beautiful little girl. So this is probably, to me, the most important slide of this presentation, because it is something that we can easily learn to do. And the more you do this, the more you will thrive from people around you. If they start to look after themselves better, they can look better after you when you need the help and the support, including your managers. And by me sharing my personal colorful stories, let's call that, to my managers, they were taking care of me. They always made sure that I was taken care of, as long as they saw I took care of myself first. And it's the reason why I've been able to get through this ordeal, to become stronger, to build up my resilience, to look at myself in the mirror, to find courage, to stop the fear, but to start to think ahead and take smaller steps. I stopped running. Now, some of you know me, and I'm an avid salsa dancer. When I dance salsa, I'm all in there. But when I walk, or when I have to think about my life and my work and my priorities, I walk very slow and take very good steps. And at times at work, I need to run, but I prepare first. So I make sure when I'm warmed up and prepared, then I can run the marathon for work without spraining an ankle or straining a muscle. So please, start taking care of yourself, because then you can take care of others. First and foremost, those of you who have children, your partners, your friends, your families, and thereafter, your managers, your work, your bosses. This was another great learning. Instead of focusing on how others are doing, pay attention on how to improve your own life. I was constantly worried about my partners. Yes, I've had 2 partners in my life, and they are important. But I was constantly focusing how they were doing, paying attention how I could improve them. And then, of course, it dawned to me when I was at the lowest of my emotions that I need to improve my own life. This goes together, this slide collides together with the one before. But by learning how we improve your life, you really need to stop focusing on how others are doing. See, when I manage my 3 managers, they are extremely busy. Their agendas are so colorful, because I love using my colors in Outlook. But I never feel sorry for them. Because if I would feel sorry for them, I would put my focus on how they're doing, rather on how to improve my own time and their time. So by focusing on how they're doing, I change my focus on asking them the question, how would you, or how can we work better together? How can you improve your life by me helping you there? So improving our own life, the way we work, the way we communicate, the way we allow people to communicate to us, is far more important than focusing how others are doing. Does that mean we need to stop asking the question, how are you doing? Great, wonderful. But I don't worry about how they're doing professionally, because it is my job to make sure that I improve my own way of life, my own strengths, my own dealing with, and then I can, just like we said before, improve others. Now, when I see my managers face to face once a month, the first thing we ask each other is, how are you doing? And then we ask each other the question, so how can we improve our work-life balance? My managers ask me, they ask me, Laura, how are you doing? How are you doing with your kids? How is your life? So automatically they improve my life, whilst I will focus also to help them improve. You stand somewhere on a little step and you ask your father, your mother, your brother, whoever, uncle, aunt, catch me, and we jump. This was probably the hardest thing when I went through all of these things in my life, both professionally and personally, is who do you trust? Now, it is so extremely important that you find people that you can trust. Now, how do you find people you can trust? Is by being truly assertive, meaning tell them what you're going through openly. Tell them what you need, what your needs are. Ask them for advice, but ask them also what they can do for you. If you don't ask, you don't get is an old saying my grandmother used to say. But trust is something that has helped me cope because my managers trust me 100%, and I probably trust them even more. I shared my story. I never made a drama out of it. I never showed it as a problem, but I needed their trust that when I was not doing well enough to perform as I should have, I would just blatantly tell them and say, if they would ask me, how are you doing, Laura? I would say, I'll be better tomorrow. And they would leave me alone. They would give me time to breathe because they knew that I learned to take small steps. But they also knew that when I was feeling better, I would warm up and prepare and stretch, and then I could run the marathon. So I was never behind on my work. I always managed to catch up. But by building this trust with your managers, with your friends, your family, you allow yourself moments where you are completely not feeling well. And I call that moments where you sit in the sofa or lie in bed, feeling sorry for yourself, eating ice cream or not eating anything, crying, whatever it may be. By trusting people and allowing people to trust you, it is where you build your resilience and where you learn to find who you can trust in different situations. Very important. I learned to trust my children, to be there for me. I learned for them to share their opinion, even when they're young, because I can always learn from someone. I have trust in my manager when he tells me, Laura, take a break. I never go into his suggestions, because if I would not trust his judgment, it means that he would stop his judgments when I tell him it's time for a break. Gave to me when I showed him my workshops, and I love it because saying no means you know your limits. And I had to say no at work at times, whether it was dealing with too many projects, when I was not capable physically or emotionally, when I was too sick to do as much as I should normally be able to do. Saying no to your children is setting limits for them. My children tell me no, and it means that I went over my limit with them. So saying no means you know your limits. How can we say no more often? By setting different goals. By, remember the hands that we saw on the slide. Take a broader picture. What is important? What is a priority to deal with right now? All of these things would help us build resilience. And resilience is like a marathon runner, having to train and warm up and stretch for months, for years. But they also feel when they're not ready, when they're not capable, they will not run. Does that mean that they're weak? Does that mean that they are not capable? No, it means they know their limits. So when we learn to know our limits, we not only protect ourselves, but we protect other people around us from getting injured, from getting overload, from getting into burnout. So saying no means you know your limits. I have this slide printed in my house because I think it's one of the most important things we need to learn to do more of. My favorite quote, and believe me, I've had to use this a couple of times. I was stuck in a situation in hospital from one day to another. So I really didn't like it. It was horrible. But I couldn't change it. It was impossible for me to change the situation. So I had to change the way I thought about it. I started to communicate once I was capable with my boss at the time at Microsoft. Finding a way to keep myself alive, to get through this ordeal. And even thereafter, years thereafter, I still do the same thing. There are certain situations I don't like, but I have to get through it. And sometimes I can change it. If I can change it, I use that time to stop and to rethink, okay, what are my priorities? How will I manage this? But if I can't change it, I change the way I think about it. Believe it or not, when I was lying months in hospital, I was teaching my nurses to dance salsa. When I was physically capable, I was showing them to work on Outlook. I allowed them to be part of my life, and it allowed me to be part of their life. Because when you are a way of ill, I hope it doesn't happen to you, but when it does happen, or those of you who went through it will understand me, you live your own life in that environment. And people outside don't forget about you. However, they don't always know what you're actually going through. Now, the biggest mistake I made was not to have enough connections. And that's why I am so privileged to be here for the support of Vickie, because I went through most of my ordeal alone. Yes, I had a partner, but dealing with 2 little children and a very little family. So I spent way too much alone. But I changed the way I thought about it. I made new friends wherever I was, at work or when I was in the hospital. I worked for a virtual team, so I didn't have many face-to-face colleagues. So changing the way you think about situation will change the way you work, will change the way privately you deal with situations. I love this quote because it's really helped me get through my colorful life so far and things that I had to go through personally and both professionally. Strengths rather than our weaknesses. Humanly, we tend to focus on our weaknesses, but I really thrive when I see people. I went to see the Special Olympics, and it's made an impact in my life because these people probably have by far more weaknesses than we ever do. Probably not only physically, but also emotionally, because they have to deal constantly with people asking them these probably silly questions. But they use their strengths 10 times more than we do, because they can't change anything about it. They change the way they think about it. I've met blind people that became tremendous singers and musicians, or crafts, because they have a huge sense of feeling and touch. I met people in a wheelchair, born or after an accident, become not just Olympic champions, but become teachers, motivational speakers. We need to focus on our strengths. And I use this professionally as well. Our managers, you know, they always say that it gets lonely at the top. Our managers deal with this as well. They might look all big and strong and confident. Of course, they've got tremendous skills to come at the top level. But they, when they're in fear or when they have doubts, they tend to go back to their weaknesses. How can we as assistants focus on our strengths to help our manager to focus on their strengths? It does make a huge difference. Point it out. I've many times told my managers, wow, I'm impressed, this is great, or spoken to them when they felt they were, they had a weakness in something, to delegate. That's why they have become great leaders. They need to find the people around them that have skills and strengths that they might not have as much, and delegate. Because delegation on its own is a strength. So all of you out there, write down your strengths. And if you feel you have a weakness, either it might be a strength waiting to be developed, or it's just a weakness that you need to accept and live with. But focus on your strengths, and I guarantee you will build your resilience, and you will build your successes both at work and in your personal life. If you do not go after what you want, you will never have it. This is some wise advice of my mom and my grandparents. If you do not ask, the answer will always be no. My daddy taught me negotiation skills. Every time I asked something, he said no right away. And believe me, I've become a master negotiator. Did I always get a yes? No. But it's been the best learning school, especially when it came for me to negotiate my role, my salary, my conditions when I was working or applying for new jobs in companies. Stepping forward, if we don't step forward, we will be in the same place. And that's both professionally, but also when you deal with health conditions. You need to step forward, because otherwise you're in the same position. When there's people around you taking your energy away, address them or simply let them go. Very important. And this is wise advice from my 12-year-old son Marvin when I was going through probably my darkest time. And I kept listening to people that thought that knew it better. I kept listening to people that thought that knew what I wanted and what my priorities were. And by changing the way I thought, and by looking at these Wise word from Dr. Seuss, who my son says that he's the cheapest therapist on earth. Just buy the little Dr. Seuss books. It really changed my career and my way of dealing with friends and family. And I will read the words to you because they are absolutely life-changing. And I hope you will keep reading these. Be you who you are and say what you feel. Because those who mind don't matter. And those who matter don't mind. Now, I lost my breast cancer when I was 13 years old, which is 37 years ago. Why this Webathon is even more important for me. My mum was in her days a tremendously strong woman, and I think knowing that you have to leave your 4 kids behind takes resilience. So I dedicate this presentation to her because the wisest words she's ever given to me was, when you are going through a rough time, Laura, when you feel nothing seems to work, or when you fear, you run to any mirror and you look at yourself and you tell yourself these words: you are doing fine. Now, I hope all of you will continue to support each other. The most beautiful thing is what we've done together for Vickie. And this is for Vickie, but this is also for all of us out there. Whether it's dealing with separation, growing children, a medical health issue, companies going bankrupt, changing jobs, changing manager, it does not matter. Find your resilience by taking time to stop, by finding the right people around you to support you, by asking people a question. Can you listen to me for a minute? By building on your trust. Remember the hands we saw on the slide. I urge you after today to go outside and take a different look at life. It would be absolutely wonderful if we can continue doing this as a support group. It doesn't matter whether, I hope nobody gets sick, but if you're going through a big ordeal, right now so many people after the hurricane, we probably would need to do another Webathon for people, some assistants that we know out there. So let's continue this tremendous success story, this support group. And I think many of you might know Bonnie Lowe Craven as well, who's one of our support gurus, and spreading the word that we need to really be there for each other. And the more we are there for each other, the stronger we will become, the more connections we will have. And before ending, I would like to thank Lucy Brazier for setting up this tremendous initiative. I would like to thank and express my gratitude to all of the other trainers, colleagues, and some of you very good friends in the meantime out there. And most of all, Vickie, you are doing fine, girl. So we're all there for you. We're all putting our resilience behind you. And I really look forward to see you. And I say cheers to you. I'm leaving Saturday to Vegas, so whomever is there, we're going to send a big cheers to Vickie. Big hug to everyone. And remember, we are doing fine. Have a nice day.